The war of all wars is happening right now, and it's actually also happening here on Canadian soil. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Today we're taking a look at just these insane amount of protests happening across Canada, all simultaneously, that if you look at the amount of people that are showing up on such short notice and you compare that to the Freedom Convoy, I would have to say this is 5 or 10 times larger than the Freedom Convoy. Before we get into it, though, I do have a message from today's sponsor, and it's very important because Canada is going through a whole lot of censorship. Government censorship, Justin Trudeau's own personal censorship, and it seems the only way that you're going to be able to access information in the very near future is by having a VPN. So thank you, Private Internet Access, for sponsoring today's video. I want to thank today's sponsor, Private Internet Access. We've teamed up together, and PIA is willing to offer my audience 83% off by using code SUNSHINE. Now, here in Canada, with Justin Trudeau in power, not only is he kind of like a communist dictator, but he's also censoring the internet, which is why you need a VPN to encrypt yourself and be able to bounce around different geolocations to really mask your not only digital footprint, but to mask your identity, because right now it's hard enough as it is to even get the news. That's right. Bill C-18 prevents users, everyday people such as yourself, myself, from accessing simple information that is our freedom of rights to information here in Canada. If you go on Facebook, you currently can't even see Canadian news. It's wild, and who knows what's next. Maybe he's going to ban everything with Google, maybe here on YouTube. So you need to cover yourself and protect yourself with a VPN such as Private Internet Access. And what better way to do that here in Canada than having 83% off? The link for that is down in the description below, as well as the pinned comment. Use code SUNSHINE with Private Internet Access for 83% off. Thank you, Private Internet Access, for sponsoring today's video. Again, I'm not a history buff, so I'm not going to get into the long-standing 100-plus year relationship, tug-of-war for a plot of land between Palestine and Israel. But what happened is just insane. The Hamas went and shot up a bunch of people at a music festival in Israel, and now you have kind of this all-out war. And you would think that a lot of people would denounce Hamas, but what we're going to take a look at today here in Canada is it's actually not really happening the way you thought it would. There's a lot of support for Palestine and the civilian Palestinians, which I don't think anyone would object. Like, you don't want to be oppressed, and you don't want to see another country oppressing. And I hope that I'm not pissing anybody off by saying this, because again, I'm not a history buff, so we're staying away from those politics. But what's happening right now in Canada is we're somewhat being taken over by Palestine supporters, and you're having a lot of Jewish communities and Jewish people. They're deathly afraid for their life and safety given what's happening over in the Middle East. So let's switch screens and take a look at this. But first, this is what Trudeau has said a few days ago. And since then, well, you're going to find out where Justin Trudeau is.
The glorification of death and violence and terror has no place anywhere, including and especially here in Canada. So let me be very clear. Hamas terrorists aren't a resistance. They're not freedom fighters. They are terrorists, and no one in Canada should be supporting them, much less celebrating them.
And that's where we have a bit of a issue, because it seems to be there are hundreds of thousands, if not potentially millions of people in Canada that are supporting Palestine. And are those supporters of Palestine and the innocent Palestinians, are they directly supporting Hamas? Well, again, you would think that that's no, but it seems like some people are actually saying yes. But let's take a look at where Justin Trudeau is right now, because he's gone into hiding. Trudeau is MIA. He's nowhere to be found for the second consecutive day. After calling others racist, he can't even be bothered to offer a message of unity and a call to reject glorification or terror and hatred in Canadian streets. This isn't leadership. You have October 14th. He's supposed to be at the nation's capital, and he's not. And October 15th. And it's just crazy because the Prime Minister's itinerary is always packed, and he's nowhere to be found. But here's where it gets just insane. Hamas has been deemed a terrorist organization. And in Canada, we stand against terrorist organizations. And if you support terrorist organizations, you can go to jail. That's like a massive criminal offense or some sort of offense here in Canada. And then you have videos like this that are surfacing, that a woman at a pro-Palestine rally in Mississauga, just outside of Toronto, defends the terrorists and says it's against Islam to behead babies, which is a claim that the IDF made, and then the mainstream media ran with it.
Hamas is not a terrorist group. Hamas is not a terrorist group.
What is it, like a motorcycle club?
It is a resistance that has been fuming for 75 years of colonialism, of occupation.
In case you haven't noticed, her earrings are like machine guns or assault rifles. It's a little crazy to hear right from somebody's mouth here in Canada that Hamas is not a terrorist organization when the whole world has pretty much deemed them a terrorist organization. So now you have to ask yourself, okay, so one person who's supporting a pro-Palestine rally has come out and said to the press that Hamas is not a terrorist organization. So does that mean that every person at these pro-Palestine rallies thinks the same way? I don't know. Let's take a look at some videos together, because there is a lot and there is an overwhelming amount of support for Palestine in the streets of Canada, which is creating a lot of intimidation, a lot of fear. And it got so many people in Canada just very confused. Happening now, a pro-Hamas rally is in Hamilton. Hamilton is not like an extraordinarily large city.
One solution. Revolution! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free! Palestine will be free! There is only one solution! Intifada revolution!
So the world is kind of seen, and especially in France, because they recently banned pro-Palestine rallies. If you're supporting Palestine out in the streets, then you're supporting directly Hamas or indirectly. And lots of governments are kind of under that same mentality. And it's leaving a lot of people very confused, because obviously not every person who supports a free state of Palestine and free of any oppression would support the Hamas, but people on the other side that are supporting Israel are saying that that is the case, that if you're supporting Palestine, you support the Hamas. So it's just very confusing. It's happening so fast. So if you feel confused, just rest assured that there's so many people who also feel very confused and conflicted on this. But the thing to not be conflicted is the Hamas did commit acts of terror, and it just very much seems like they are a terrorist organization. So if you're supporting Hamas, yeah, I would tread lightly on that one, very much so. Then you have Ezra Levant that says, holy crap, the Trudeau-funded TV network that refuses to call Hamas a terrorist group is giving lectures about misinformation, which is wild, because the mainstream media is saying we have all the information and everything else is misinformation and you can only trust us. But you're seeing a lot of clips getting debunked very rapidly on X via community notes. Here's another clip of the pro-Palestine rally happening in Hamilton. I'm actually surprised that all of these Palestine supporters walked across the rainbow crosswalk. That's interesting. Just because in the Middle East, everyone pretty much knows that being gay is illegal. So that's interesting.
Palestine will never die!
shame on Canada, shame on Trudeau, Olivia Chow, and readers. If you don't call for a ceasefire, you are endorsing Israel to massacre 2 million plus innocent Palestinian civilians in the following weeks. And this is where it gets very tricky because, of course, civilians are stuck in the crossfire. Civilians that have, nothing to do with any acts of terror or any sort of freedom fighting mentality. Just people that are born and raised there that obviously can't get out are now being cut off of water, and now you have a whole humanitarian issue, and it's getting very tricky. And my opinion on this is, I'm going to double down on what I said right when this first happened. So if you caught those videos, this is going to sound familiar. This is adding to more Islamophobia, anti-Semitic comments. Like it's giving people more reasons to profile people, to be racist or hold, discriminate people based off their religion. This isn't good. We're seeing a massive divide. Politicians are obviously doubling down on Israel good, Palestine, Gaza bad, and it's going backwards now, from when 9/11 just happened, that brown people bad, white people good. That's the mentality that you're seeing kind of governments push. And it's very scary because I think that there's like a 350,000 Jewish population here in Canada, and there's like over 2.5 Muslims, if not more, here in Canada. So when you look at the sheer numbers, it's quite imbalanced. And if governments are really pushing the narrative that we're going to oppress Muslims in the Arabic countries. And I'm not saying that's what's happening. I'm not saying that's not what's happening. I'm just saying that a lot of people are very angry at the oppression of Palestine. And a lot of people are obviously rightfully angry at the terror attacks that happen against Israel. And I think that we should be focusing more on peace. And I would like to see Canada and its politicians focus more on peace, because we're very fragile as a world right now, as a globe. And with the ability to mass transfer information and receive it so fast and just raw, unedited stuff on X and YouTube and TikTok or whatever it is, people are getting pissed more and more by the minute. And the longer that the governments wait, the worse things are going to get, especially when you have testimonies like this of somebody in Canada who says, we were walking our dog in a small town in Canada today and came across another couple with a dog. The woman was wearing a Star of David necklace. My wife innocently said, "Are you Jewish?" The woman quickly covered it with her hand, not saying anything. And my wife added, "Because we're Jewish too." The split second of fear in her face said so much about how we're all feeling right now. And they have more and more testimonies like that across Canada. I mean, this right here is Centennial Park in Toronto today. Clearly, this is just about freeing Palestine. No hatred towards Jews whatsoever, he says, in a satirical kind of way. Attack the Jews is what is being spray painted, and you're seeing more and more of this, whether it's just idiots messing around or whether it's actually coming from a real hatred place instead of trolling just to incite more fear and more clicks on social media, because a lot of that is happening as well. You have a lot of people using like video game footage on X that makes it look ultra real with the advanced technology of missiles launching, and people are thinking it's real until it gets hit with community notes. It's just scary what's going on. So if you're very confused, again, I want to reiterate, you're not the only one. There's so many people out there that are very confused. And I think the government, the longer that they take to actually address what's happening, the worse things are going to get, because this is done all within less than a week from when this happened. I believe it's been less than a week, or just around a week, and you've already seen these protests amp up their speed, and the more tensions, get tighter, I guess, overseas, where this is happening, then the crazier things are going to get here in Canada. Again, you have in Hamilton, police have given the okay for blockades to happen and for these protests to take place, which is kind of what you saw in Ottawa with the Freedom Convoy, right? It was all police escorted. And one of the major differences between the Freedom Convoy was, oppression that was happening here, but it wasn't terror attacks. It wasn't, bombings and like the actual like gun and blood type of violence that was happening here that people were protesting, and everyone had the right to protest Freedom Convoy. Obviously, I definitely don't want to take away from that. And so it was more celebratory in the sense of, hey, let's all just go and honk horns and show the governments that we're peaceful. And what's happening with these protests that make it so different is it's coming from like a very strong place of hatred, lots of emotions involved, as was the Freedom Convoy. But you're comparing mandates to like literal war. And so that's a bit of apple and oranges. And how the escalation of violence, if you compare the two, which one do you think would escalate quicker to violence? You think the Freedom Convoy was at the odds of escalating to violence a lot quicker than people that are standing up for oppression for their people overseas that are literally going through a war, and some would call it genocide from either side, genocide against the Jews or genocide against Palestinians. So this can escalate from 0 to 100 extremely fast. And we're seeing these protests pick up and gather more momentum. And it's not looking good, folks. It's really not looking good. I was reliably told that protests with honking horns warranted martial law, seized bank accounts, and lengthy jail times, says Ezra. But that's only for peaceful truckers. Hamas supporters can do what they want, especially in districts where the liberal MPs are openly pro-Hamas too. And then it looks like you have actual Hamas supporters in their cars going around the streets. I mean, if you see this in your town and you feel a little afraid, I mean, yeah, it's not something that you see every day, people wearing their headscarves and things like that here in Canada, waving foreign flags that the government is saying they're terrorists. So it seems like they're indirectly supporting terrorists. So yeah, of course, if you see this in your town, especially if it's a smaller town, well, it doesn't matter where it is, it's definitely put a lot of fear into Canadians. And I got one more clip here, an anti-Israel protest march in Mississauga. So it's not just happening in smaller towns like Hamilton, it's happening in Toronto, it's happening in Mississauga, it's happening in Ottawa as well.
Free Palestine! Free, 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 free Palestine!
So there's a lot of Canadians that are obviously very concerned about this. There's a lot of Canadians that support this and a lot of that don't. And I think that we need a little bit more leadership and guidance from our politicians who seemingly, at least our prime minister, has been quite silent and gone back into hiding. That's where we're going to end in today's video. I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to give a like and subscribe if you haven't yet already. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.